Welcome back to another Mech Deck Tech. Today we have our first upgrade guide for the Lost Caverns of Ixalan, featuring Veloci-Ramp-Tor. This Dinosaur Kindred deck is looking to pop out some big stumpy boys and overwhelm our opponents with pure power. Before we dive on in, I noticed that most of you still aren't subscribed. Go ahead and tap that subscribe button and ring the bell to ensure that you never miss an episode. Maybe even earn yourselves a little shout out in one of our future videos. This video is dedicated to Strelzik. Strelzik, you rock. As always, we're swapping out 10 cards and not touching lands, though at 39, I feel like you could probably cut a few and this deck would still work pretty well. Let's start with those cards that didn't quite make the cut for one reason or another. Topping that list is Atsakan Seer. This is a 3-cost mana dork that you could sacrifice to return a dino from grave to hand. The 3 mana for a dork whose purpose is to mainly generate a little bit of mana is a little slow for my taste. I think it's just a little too expensive for what it's doing. Following up the Seer, we have Deathgorge Scavenger. This 3-cost 3/2 has some graveyard hate stapled onto it, which rewards us with either a little bit of life gain or a temporary stat boost. And it's the fact that that boost is temporary that really makes me feel like this just isn't going to make the cut. On top of that, they have a tiny booty, which our commander isn't looking for. Right, our commander cares about the toughness of our dinos. We're looking for big old booties, talking triple C thick. So for that reason, they had to go. This next one may come as a shock, but I assure you I found a suitable replacement, and it's Atali Primal Storm. I love Atali as much as the next person, but they're always a major target for removal. And although we have a few haste enablers in the deck, I don't think that we're going to consistently see those haste enablers with Atali. So we're just not going to get that trigger. But don't worry, they've been replaced well. We'll check them out in a little bit. Following up the Storm, we have Generous Gift. It's a single piece of removal that offers up a 3/3 elephant, and I think we could do without it. It's certainly not a horrible piece of removal, but it's not as strong as some others, and at 3 mana, we're forced to hold up quite a bit. You know, and what is admittedly a pretty high mana curve. Up next is Itzquith, Firstborn of Geshath. This hasty little 2/3 isn't worth playing at 2 mana, so you're always going to want to play them at 4. And like, yeah, that might let you pop a creature an opponent controls, but if you're playing it on curve, you're really only going to be hitting for like 2 to 3 damage. Which, like, don't get me wrong, popping a creature is still popping a creature, but you kind of want this as a more of a late game thing to really blow up someone's big creature with one of your really big dinos. And in an aggro deck, I think that, like, if you draw this early, it's just sort of dead in hand. And, you know, that's just, it's not what we're looking for. It feels a little counterintuitive. But, you know, let me know. Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think this card should have stayed? Do you think that little bit of removal tacked onto a 2/3 hasty body could make a difference? Majestic Heliopterus follows up the Firstborn and is a flying 2/2 for 4. And sure, on attack, right, it's granting another dino flying. The evasion's good, but the stats are so weak. And again, like, right, we're looking for big booties. At 4 mana, we can just cast our commander instead. Commander feels much stronger. Most of our other 4-drops just feel more impactful than this, like, little 2/2 flyer. So, they're out of here. Raging Regisaur is up next on the chopping block. And it's meant to trigger some enrage effects. You know, specifically, you know, 1 per attack. And though we could also use that 1 little ping damage to blow up a tiny creature an opponent controls, or maybe even just, like, ping an opponent for that little bit of 1 life, we really just don't have enough enrage in the deck to really justify leaning into this strategy. And so for that reason, I'm going to say that Raging Regisaur is out. Savage Stomp is another piece of removal that we've removed. It, you know, it could boost up a dino that we control. It forces a fight. It's not bad, but we have plenty of other ways to run over our opponent's creatures already. And being at sorcery speed really holds it back. If this was an instant speed spell, it would 100% stick around. But as it is, I think it has to go. Verdant Sun's Avatar is up next, and it's a 5/5 life gainer for 7. It's honestly just a little too expensive for what it does. This deck isn't focused on life gain. I think that the life gain was meant to kind of give you a buffer to allow you to freely swing out without being as concerned about the clapback. But, you know, the life gain in this deck isn't going to win you the match. Last up is an 8-cost word soup of a dino, and that's Zatalpa Primal Dawn. Those keywords are great, and that big old booty is exactly what our commander is kind of looking for, so cutting this could be viewed as a mistake. But I think with what we've added in place of it, we'll be just fine. Speaking of what we've added, let's go over the new additions to the deck. Topping that list is Garruk's Uprising, which offers all of our big beefy dinos trample, and gives us a ton of card draw. With 22 of our creatures being able to trigger this card draw, we should be able to keep a pretty full grip at all times. In a similar vein, though with more creatures, proccing that trigger, we have Elemental Bond, which only requires 3 power to let us draw a card. This card allows 5 new creatures to give us some card draw when they ETB, though it isn't offering the trample that Garruk is. Moving into artifacts, we've added Quicksilver Amulet to cheat out some of our big boys for a mere 4 mana. With 19 of our creatures costing more than 4 mana, this could be a godsend to play those big stompy dinos way ahead of curve. The next card handles a lack of mana rocks in this deck. The deck only comes with 3 mana rocks, one of which costs 3, which isn't ideal, but it's Herald's Horn, which is sliding in to provide some extra value by reducing the cost of our dino's spells by 1, and allowing us to have even more card draw, assuming that a dino happens to be sitting on top of our deck at upkeep. We're cruising past our slingable spells and moving right into creatures with Titanic Rex, who we could cycle away to draw a card and put a trample counter on another big dino we already have, or we could cast it and get a Tramply 11/11 with a huge Discover trigger from our commander. Following up Rex, we have Silverclad Ferocitons to force our opponents to sack a permanent when they take damage, meaning that they really don't want to block this creature. But that 8 damage can only be taken so many times before it really becomes an issue. Kinjali's Collar is up next, and is in many ways a direct replacement for the Seer that we took out earlier. They cost less, but bring more mana value to the table, so it's a win-win all around. This 0/3 for 1 white mana is going to reduce the cost of all of our dino spells by 1, so the more we cast in any given turn, the more mana value that they really provide. Up next is the biggest of boys, Gyalta Primal Hunger. This trampling 12/12 naturally costs 12, but the cost is reduced based on the total power of creatures we control. And with how many big stumpy boys we have, this could cost us as little as 2 green mana, and the fact that they have 12 toughness means that we could really discover any card in our deck as long as our commander is on the field. Atali Primal Storm didn't get to hang out, but cooler Atali is here to take its place. I'm of course talking about the Primal Conqueror. On ETB, each player exiles off the top of their library until they hit a non-land card, and we get to cast all of those cards for free. You could also transform them into an 11/11 with Trample that passes out poison counters as an alternative win con, and that transformation would also trigger our commander again, allowing us to explore even further. Last up, but certainly not least, is the golden nightmare of the deck. It's the Invasion of Ikoria. This tutor is going to let us grab any dino we want from our deck or graveyard and put them on the field for as little extra as 2 green mana. Once we finish off this battle, it'll transform into Zalortha, Apex of Ikoria, a lovely 8/8 dino that will trigger our commander, but more importantly, allow all of our dinos to assign damage as if they hadn't been blocked at all. Our opponents can have all the blockers they want and we won't care. We're still punching them in the face for a ton of dino damage. As always, we have some honorable mentions, cards that didn't make the cut for one reason or another, and topping that list is Bloom Tender. This mana dork could tap for 3 colors for us, but unfortunately it sits at about $14, and it's just a little too expensive to recommend picking up. I do run a copy of this in my Slimefoot and Squee deck, and ooh, it is chef's kiss, putting in the work and giving me a ton of value to ramp ahead of all of my opponents. Gyalta. Stampede Tyrant is a powerhouse for this deck, especially if we've been getting all those card draw triggers. With a full grip, we could see a full wave of dinos take the stage, which could be a quick way to rebuild after a board wipe. Unfortunately, it is sitting at $30 right now, and that's basically the entire budget, so they just couldn't hang. Gishath, Sun's Avatar, is another way to cheat out dinos, which is this deck's favorite pastime, but at $13, again, just a little too expensive to pick up. Gorging Ceratops is actually pretty budget friendly, sitting at just over $1, and passes out Double Strike to all of our attacking creatures. It's super powerful, but I just couldn't find a spot for it. in like the 10 slots we had available. Should it have taken precedent over one of the other cards that we added? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Hunting Veloci-Raptor is another great way to cheat out dinos, but sitting at $16 right now is again just a little too expensive. With the amount of trample we have in the deck, you know, getting in that little bit of damage shouldn't be difficult, and then we get to have all of our dinosaurs prowl. Last up for the honorable creatures is Kogla and Yadaro, a 7/7 for 6 that can swing right away, fight right away, or we could discard them at a reduced cost to blow up an artifact or enchantment, shuffle them away, draw a new card, possibly redrawing them. Odds are against it, but it could happen. Moving into artifacts, we have Monster Manual as another way to cheat in creatures, but it costs $8 at the moment, and with the budget in mind, it's just a little too expensive with the cards that we've already picked out. But if you already have it, it's definitely a good alternative to the Quicksilver Amulet, or a good addition, you know. Really just depends on what you have as your budget. With how much we're looking to discover in this deck, the next two choices are pretty powerful, both in the form of Scroll Rack and Sensei's Divining Top. Manipulating the top of our deck ensures that we're getting max value out of those Explore triggers, but both cards are a little expensive, sitting around like the $20 to $25 range. Last up for artifacts is the Great Henge. With powerful dinos, you know, this is always going to be, you know, hugely discounted. It's a great mana rock. It boosts the dinos that we play off of it. You know, we're getting some card draw as well. Understandably and unfortunately, it is sitting at $50 still. So it can't make the cut. It's too expensive. Just 4 cards to go. They're all enchantments, and we're starting off with Colossal Majesty. This budget-friendly enchantment is going to let us draw a card per turn, assuming we have a creature with at least 4 power at upkeep. I've chosen to prioritize the cards that let us draw off casting our big creatures and whatnot. This way we could draw more than 1 card a turn off them, but this is definitely a good alternative. Teleportation Circle works really well with our commander and with a few of the other dinos that have decent ETB effects. It sits around $9 at the moment, and for that reason I didn't feel like I could include it with the other cards, again trying to keep this sort of budget friendly, but it's a great card to abuse ETB effects, which our commander is kind of like looking to do anyway. Unnatural Growth is here to beef up our already beefy boys in combat, and in the right moments with Trample tacked on, could pack a very, very, very big punch. Last up is Warstorm Surge. It's budget friendly, a good way to throw a lot of damage around with our big stumpy boys, but the 6 mana cost is a little high, and our curve is already kind of high. So it's that high cost to cast that really made me kind of skip over it for the guide. But if you think that like you're going to be able to, you know, get enough mana reduction or mana ramp in place and still play this and get like some other stuff going, it's definitely a powerful removal piece. But guys, that is the upgrade guide and honorable mentions. You know, were there cards that I took out that you think should have stayed? Cards that I added that you don't think belong? Is there a Precon from Ixalan that you'd like to see next? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you'd like help building your own decks, or just want to sling some spells with me over on Spell Table, consider joining the Discord. And as always, good luck with your builds.